I've got a very common name, being just John Smith, and really I've never risen to any great position. I'm not an archbishop. I've had reasonable success in life and the things I've pursued. But I've had some very wonderful moments that I don't deserve, and they've always been a bit of a mystery to me, but one of the most precious moments in my lengthy career of travelling around the world and speaking at all sorts of conferences was the opportunity to share the platform of the 10th anniversary of Habitat for Humanity, that group that build houses for the poor. A group made very famous through the work of Jimmy Carter, who I just read yesterday, in his 90s, just having had a year of radiation for brain cancer, was setting out to do another something like 500 hours of personal commitment with a hammer in his hand, helping to build new houses. It's not what most presidents of the United States have done once they've left. They've usually gone for a comfortable, enjoyable life, but Jimmy hasn't. It's interesting that at the very time that I thought I'd like to make a comment out of my own life experience, Jimmy Carter came to mind because at that particular conference in America, I'll never forget the speech he gave. America has just badly bombed and rocketed one of those countries not too far south of them. We don't want to get involved in the reasons for that, but it was a pretty dubious kind of attack on a very small little country that was supposed to be pursuing someone, and they sent rockets into poor districts and so on. I'll never forget Carter, because it was just after that he gave this speech. And he said, if we want to talk about greatness in a human being, we'll talk about integrity, reliability, compassion, all of those kind of qualities. And he said, surely, if we're going to speak about the greatness of a nation, it'll be the same qualities, the qualities of integrity and compassion. And taking your weapons as one of the most powerful nations on earth and bombing some third world poor country hardly is a statement of greatness for any nation. Well, I guess a lot of Americans hate Jimmy Carter because they find that kind of critique of American behaviour over the years quite destructive to their sense of self-esteem as American citizens. But it's interesting that just at the time of me putting this on film, we've been really flooded with material about a report on energy in this country. And you know, here is a devoutly Christian Baptist president who basically has just been written off, who since he resigned has lived a Christ-like, compassionate life. But I wonder if you know that in 1979, you think about that. What's that, almost 4 decades ago? In 1979, he dedicated a set of solar panels put on the White House, way back then, because he saw the crisis about energy. And he said these strange words. He said, a generation from now, this solar heater can either be a curiosity, a museum piece, an example of a road not taken, or it can be just a small part of one of the greatest and most exciting adventures ever undertaken by the American people. Now, he said that about the solar panels on the 20th of June, 1979. It's a sad thing, but an author some years later wrote this, a book, Where Did the Carter White House's Solar Panels Go? Well, the solar panels were actually removed by the president that followed him, Ronald Reagan. And listen to this one. They've eventually been moved and displayed in museums, including the Smithsonian Institute and the Solar and Technology Museum in Dezhou, China. I read that and I thought, you know, I haven't time in this little recording to give you the details, but look it up for yourself. You can go online and check it out. He saw the issue of what was going to happen over energy as being a really serious ethical issue in the world to do with what we're doing in the destruction of the environment, what would be likely to happen in terms of hostility between nations and between peoples if we didn't deal with the issue of energy. And when you read the full text of what he said on that day, you find that it came out of profoundly religious Christian view, not just a scientific view. Isn't it amazing? And here we are, so long after, and that president that's been so dismissed, who tried so much to bring the principles of Jesus back to his nation, principles about justice, because he was one of the few presidents that ever said that American foreign policy needed to be centred in human rights, not in the ascendancy and power of his nation. And I just wanted to say that because I sat at that conference and heard Jimmy preach that kind of thing. It moved me then, and given what's going on in the world today about the issue of energy, and given the reason we are not doing what we know we could do about it, has got to do with power and prosperity and power elites that control stock exchanges and people who own the sources of expensive, environmentally destructive power. I thought, well, 1979, and then that little time on the platform listening to a Jesus follower calling his people to walk in humility, in respect for the environment, and love for one another, rather than subservience to the stock exchange. And I'm listening this week in my country, early hours of this morning, on the ABC, all the reports about the struggles on either side of the political fence. And when you think about it, it's ethical issues and not simply scientific ones that stop us from doing the right thing by one another and by the beautiful planet that God has given us. Dig into your computer and check out Jimmy's full address. In 1979, dedication of solar panels on the White House, and do some prayerful thinking about how far ahead this Jesus follower was, given where we are now.